All right, kids, we're going to continue with solving quadratic equations, but going to be doing something brand new today. You're going to need to have your calculator handy, so make sure you have that out. Okay. Remember, a little refresher here, our quadratic equations are usually in this form of y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. But a lot of times we replace the y with a 0. It's really the same thing. This is called standard form. Remember, what makes something quadratic is the fact that the highest power of x is this 2. Okay, and the number in front of that x squared is the a term. The number in front of the plane x is the b term. And then the plane number at the end, the constant at the end, is called the c term. Just so you know, and I think I mentioned this before, any quadratic equation is going to graph out as a parabola. All right? Parabola is this U-shaped thing. Sometimes it might be upside down. It's never sideways, though. And then this parabola, where it crosses the x-axis, these are called the x-intercepts. In this particular graph, there's 2 of them. Those x-intercepts are also called the solutions. So what we've been doing recently when we've been solving these quadratic equations by factoring, those answers that we get are actually the x-intercepts of the parabola that would represent that that equation. Okay, so I want you to realize that the x-intercepts and the solutions, those are referring to the same thing, but they're referring to the x value here on the x-axis where the parabola crosses the x-axis. Okay, notice how what's on the x-axis, the value of y is always 0. That's why this y is often replaced with a 0, because when we're solving an equation, we're actually finding the x-intercepts. It's where the graph crosses the x-axis, and the y value is 0 there. Now, what's going to be brand new today is we're going to use something called quadratic formula. You realize not everything solves by factoring. So the quadratic formula is this ugly looking thing, okay? These are b's, by the way. So x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, okay? This is, use this to solve, whoops, not too sure what happened there. My pen just died on me. Let's see if I can get this going again. There we go. So you want to use this, use when you have a b term and factoring looks to be difficult. Because sometimes factoring can be really quick, and it's much quicker than using this method here. This method here, using the quadratic formula, it works all the time. But it can take a little process. Okay, so here, let me give you some examples, and we'll kind of walk through this. First of all, your quadratic equation, just like when we're doing zero product property, you need to be set equal to 0, which this one is. The first thing I want you to do is to write down the a, b, and c values. Remember, the a is in front of the x squared. It's this invisible 1. The b is 5. The c is this 14, but remember, it's negative 14. Now we're going to plug into the quadratic formula. It says x equals the opposite of b, which would be negative 5, plus or minus the square root b squared. I want you to write this whole thing down just by plugging it in. Minus 4 times a times c, okay, all over 2 times a. Now the next thing, what I want you to show is go ahead and figure out what this number inside the square root is. Well, 2 times 1 is 2 on the bottom. In other words, you're going to do 5 squared. It's best if you use the TI Inspire on your iPad. That's going to be a great thing to use. But 5 squared minus 4, if you type in this on your TI Inspire, not the square root sign itself, but just what's underneath it, okay, you're going to get 81, because that's what, this thing doesn't need to be so long then, does it? Okay. Now we got a couple more steps here. We know that the square root of 81 is 9. So now we have to do -5. Remember, this is plus 9 over 2. But then we also have to do -5 minus 9 over 2. And we're going to get 2 answers. So -5 plus 9 is going to be 4, and 4 over 2 is 2. -5 minus 9 is -14, and -14 over 2 is -7. These are the solutions. These are the x-intercepts of the parabola. We'll talk more about the graphing later, but we're just still focusing on solving right now. Okay, you're often going to get 2 answers. Sometimes you'll get 1 answer. Sometimes you will get no solution, but you'll never get more than 2 answers. It's impossible. Okay, so maybe you want to try this next one yourself. Same thing that we just did. It's already set equal to 0. That's good. Write down A, B, and C. X equals opposite B plus or minus square root B squared minus 4 times A times C, all over 2 times A. 2 times 3 is 6. Now again, type in what's underneath the square root sign. That's going to come out to 100. 8 squared minus 4 times 3 times -3. Now you see how that's a perfect square? If it comes out to a nice perfect square, that means this actually could have been factored. But we're focusing on quadratic formula right now. Now, square root of 100, of course, is 10. So now we have to do 2 things, right? We have to do x. What am I doing here? We have to do -8 plus 10 over 6. We have to do -8 minus 10 over 6. Because there's 2 answers here. -8 plus 10 is 2, and 2 over 6 is 1/3. -8 minus 10 is -18, and -18 over 6 is -3. So there are our 2 answers. All right. Okay, now both of these that we just did, you see how we have this nice perfect square, square root of 81, square root of 100. That means that they actually could have been factored. In fact, but sometimes factoring is quicker, sometimes it's not. Here, we have to be equal to 0. So we have to move the 2 over, okay? I'm going to write down A, B, and C. Remember, B is -4 here. If you try to factor this one, you realize this is not factorable, because factor pairs of 2, there's no factor pairs of 2 that's going to give you this -4 in the middle. Just because it's not factorable doesn't mean it can't be done. Okay, we use quadratic formula. X equals opposite of B. Opposite of a negative is a positive. Plus or minus B squared minus 4 times A times C, all over 2A. Now in this one, we're going to get 4 plus or minus, this is a 2 on the bottom. If you type in this stuff inside, it's going to come out to 8. 8's not a perfect square, so this is not something nice. So this is something you just have to do the rest in your calculator. You want to do 4 plus the square root of 8 and then divide by 2. And then you want to do 4 minus the square root of 8 and divide by 2. This is where you're going to use your calculator. Okay, using the TI Inspire on your iPad is the best. So x equals 4 plus square root of 8. So figure out what that numerator is, then divide it by 2. You should come up with 3.41. And then do the same thing, but now a subtraction. Figure out what the numerator is for minus root 8, divide by 2, and you're going to get 0.59. Okay? So that's one that wouldn't have factored, and when it's not factorable, that means you get this, you get these decimals. Okay. Here I'm going to quickly do these other ones. Again, you have to be equal to 0, so let's move the negative 4 over. So 5x squared plus 12x plus 4 equals 0. A is 5, B is 12, C is 4. You know, I don't even know if this thing would factor or not, but it looks like it might be a little bit of a pain. So I'm just going to do quadratic formula. Opposite B plus or minus B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. Okay, negative 12 plus or minus, the denominator becomes a 10. If you type in what's underneath this, you're going to get 64. That's a perfect square. That's 8. So now I can actually do it without a calculator. This one's supposed to be minus, sorry. So negative 12 minus 8 is negative 20. Negative 20 over 10 is negative 2. That's one answer. Negative 12 plus 8 is negative 4. Negative 4 over 10 reduces to negative 2/5. Okay, so there's your other answer. All right. Hopefully you can do these yourself here. I'm going to quickly do these last two. And, you know, again, set it equal to 0. 2x squared minus 3x minus 8. Write down your ABC. Don't forget about the negatives. X equals opposite of B plus or minus square root. And then we're going to have what? Computer's wigging out. I'll come back in a second. All right, there it's back. So B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times. And on this one, you're going to get 3 plus or minus, denominator is 4. Negative 3 squared, if you type in this, that comes out to 73. Square root of 73 is not a nice number, so you have to use your calculator on this. So you're going to do 3 plus square root of 73 divided by 4. That should give you 2.89. And then you're going to do 3 minus the square root of 73 and divide by 4, and you're going to get negative 1.39. Okay. Now this one here is nothing different. It says find the x-intercepts, but remember the x-intercepts are the same thing as the solution, so you still want to solve. But every x-intercept has a y value of 0, so we change this to, you know, this is really 0 equals x squared minus 2x plus 5. You can try to factor this. It looks like it'd be easy, but it doesn't factor. A is going to be negative 1, B is going to be negative 2, C is going to be 5. X equals opposite B plus or minus square root. b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times, I may have a mistake here, sorry. My a is positive 1, I'm not too sure where that came from, sorry about that. Okay. So 2 plus or minus, this is going to come out to, this is going to be 4, and that's going to be minus 20. Well, 4 minus 20 is negative 16. And no matter how hard we try, we cannot take the square root of a negative number. So this is no solution. So this is an example of one where you don't get any answers. I said the most common is 2 answers. Sometimes you get 1 answer. We haven't seen that yet. But there was no answers. Okay. Hope that helps.